to introduce myself, my name's Tina Gonsalves, and I've been working on the Chameleon Project for a couple of years now. Well, started early last year, and we're finishing at probably around the March, April side of next year. So we're sort of moving into the end of the project, and it's been a huge project. Taken a lot of my time, and it's been incredibly interesting. And some of my roles, I'm honorary artist in resident at the Wellcome Department of Imaging Neuroscience at UCL, and also visiting artist at the MIT Media Lab. So I work with a team to develop the facial recognition technology over there, and also coming up as artist in resident at Nokia Research Lab. So you can see my work sort of revolves around technology, social communication, and stuff like that. And I'm doing my PhD in Australia as well, but I don't get to spend much time there at the moment. And to put into context, so I started around this sort of work probably about, around the 1994 mark, and I started to do a lot of these collages that looked at diagnostic imaging, or the results of diagnostic imaging, the X-rays and the MRI scans and stuff like that. And I was very much interested in how I could recollage them to insert some sort of emotive value back into them, because they were sort of these images about death and hope, and quite potent images, but the way they were rendered was quite cold, I guess. I spent a lot of time cutting them up, and this sort of led into a big series of work, which led into short films, which led into video, which led into sound, which led into installations that sort of induced emotional sort of states. And then I thought, how can we bring video close to the body? And so that led to wearable sort of video works. And then I started to think, well, how could we use the audience's emotion to drive the video work? So that led to, looking at voice and heart rate and sweat and all these little emotional signatures of the body to drive video, to create video that I guess was more empathic with the audience that were sort of partaking in the work. And this led to a fellowship with Hugo Critchley, who is going to be talking today at the Institute of Neurology, at the Institute of Neuroscience at UCL in 2005, 2006. And then hence we've sort of been working on projects together since then. And then this led to the Chameleon Project. And this is a very dark slide, actually. But we had the artists' names under there. So first we have, I'm not sure whether many of you know about this sort of area of work, but there's quite a few interesting artists out there producing works that sort of respond to the physiology of the body, or sort of try to drive a sort of empathic relationship with the audience. We have Alex Wright there, who works a lot with scientists, and we have Pia Ticker, who works a lot with sort of GSR and driving sort of film narratives. George Coote over here, an Australian artist, works a lot with GSR, which is sweat. Chad Davies over here, she did quite some seminal work back then, that's quite old, about 15 years old or so, VR works that respond to breath and movement, I think. But and then we have a lot older works with Clark, and then also Charlotte Moorman and Nambu Park with the TV cello. They're sort of making the outside, the inside, outside, and externalising the internal. And they're all really interesting artists, but, here to assess the body, you usually have to have it still and, put sensors on the body, which makes a change in how the body's being read, I guess, because if you get something strapped to you, you all of a sudden become quite nervous. And this one here, really beautiful work, very immersive work, but you have to wear these big, helmets to interact with it and stuff like that. So I guess with the Chameleon Project, I was interested in ways of monitoring the body, but monitoring it more naturalistically, probably from a distance. And a couple of years ago, I met the team from MIT. And they were developing this facial recognition technology, and I thought it would be quite interesting. At the time, I was also chatting a bit with Chris Frick, who's not here today, but a neuroscientist working in sort of around how we socialise. And this is the team, and it's really big. I'm sorry if this writing seems quite small from back there, but it's we've got Hugo and Chris and the MIT Media Lab team, and now we're working with the guys from the American International University in Cairo. Bruno's a really fantastic neuroscientist from us here, and we've got Nadia and the human interaction team. Nadia gets her master's students to take the project on. And here we've also brought in for Prototype 8, Natacha and Michael, who are really fantastic artists based in Paris that Natacha's going to talk a little bit later on, and they're developing these screens that we're really hoping to implement into the project. Gordon Brown, who's not here today, sadly enough, because he's sick. I hope it's not swine flu. And Jeff, who's very good, actually he's a very good artist and technologist based in Berlin, and Helen Sloan, who's director of SCAN. So it's a really big team, and it seems to be growing quite a lot, but because of the vastness of exploring this area, we sort of need all of these people involved. So what is Chameleon? Chameleon is it's a video installation that explores ideas of emotion contagion, which is how we transfer emotions between each other. And we're hoping the work mimics and probes and sort of implicates the audience into some sort of emotional drama. And so, what is emotional contagion? This is something I'm going to get Hugo to tell you about, because he'll tell you about a lot more clearly than I will. But emotional contagion is when we walk down the street, when we partake in our everyday, we are constantly adapting and changing to people around us. If you've noticed that you find you're hanging out with someone quite depressing, you'll probably walk away from them quite depressed. And if someone smiles at us, it's quite instant that we want to smile back, and it sort of happens without us knowing about it. So it sort of, and this sort of creates we're constantly imitating people, and then also Hugo's going to tell you a bit more about this, but a lot happens to the brain when we fake a smile as well. The same parts of the brain tend to highlight. Do you want to talk?
If you want me to talk, I'll...
Yeah, I'd like you to talk.
Sorry.
But these changes happen constantly, and with this project and with various cells, we're really interested, well, what happens, how does it happen, and how can we sort of exploit it to become part of the video, art project.
No, thanks.
No.
I've been working with Hugo since 2005 now. I managed to get him involved in... And I guess Hugo, guides me on what sort of recent, research is happening, so I'm reading the right stuff and...
I've been given quite a large task actually to explain emotion contagion, and I haven't actually been doing that. Just to put things in context, I'm working as a neuroscientist and psychiatrist based at the medical school in Brighton. I was in UCL. I've been funded by the Wellcome Trust on a programme grant since 2004, basically looking at how the brain and body interacts to cause both psychological symptoms that might come from physical pains or arousal states generated in the body, and at the same time looking at how emotions may influence the body and thereby influence health. And related to that, because I've been doing brain imaging experiments with people linked up to physiological monitors and so forth, I kind of felt it was nice to be given the opportunity through meeting Tina to explain this to a wider audience and to show the validity, if you like, of the mechanisms that I've been exploring very scientifically in a way that can engage an audience and just show the principles about how emotions affect the body and how the body might affect the mind. And through this collaboration with Tina, we started doing that, Tina producing the videos driven by physiological states in a number of works, and this has now extended to my involvement with Tina's much larger and ambitious project, the Chameleon Project, which we're hearing about today. The classic psychology textbook on emotion contagion, written by Elaine Hatfield, John Cassioppo and Richard Rapson, illustrates what's meant by emotion contagion on the front cover. essentially, if someone's experiencing a state of emotional arousal, which is kind of valence, it carries a particular positive, negative quality, if you like, other people automatically go into the same mode of physiological state and, to some extent, subjective feeling state, emotional state. So this shows one of a set of videos that Tina made while she was in our lab in UCL. And what we were doing here was showing people some videos of varying degrees of physiological invasive value, if you like. Basically, we were trying to make people feel a bit sick. And we were scanning their brains at the same time. Crashed on me now. And while we were scanning their brains, we were measuring both the heart response to these videos and the stomach response to the videos. And to illustrate the point about contagion, we found that the changes in the stomach when you start feeling sick, where the rhythms, the electrical rhythms in the stomach start going a bit faster, correlate with the activity in the brain region that's the same brain region that is also responsible for reporting, if you like, how nauseous you feel. So when we got people to rate the videos and correlated that with where the changes were in the brain when they were watching the videos, it was the same area that was controlling the stomach. So showing that just the experience of nausea, but the reciprocated experience of nausea, because you're watching someone else feeling sick, generates nausea in the person through engaging the stomach itself. Most emotions in science are studied using facial stimuli, and the argument is that faces are the most powerful communicators of emotion. And these faces date from a series produced by a scientist called Paul Ekman in the 1970s, Ekman and Friesen. And they're just widely used in every study of emotion, pretty much across neuroscience, showing prototypical emotions of anger, surprise, disgust, surprise, again, anger, fear, yeah. Anyway, facial emotions controlled by facial muscles. Corrugator is the one that makes you frown. Zygomaticus is one that makes you smile, and there's a depressor angularis oris that turns the corners of your mouth down. And if you put electrodes on these points on the faces, you can show that even without seeing the facial movements, you get changes in the activity of these muscles when you see other people make facial expressions. Another way of showing how automatic your own muscle responses to other people's expressions can be achieved using high-speed digital cameras. And this shows a study in Japan where a student was just watching a whole load of stimuli videos on a screen, and the student didn't know she was being filmed, and the filming was done at very high speeds. So, where are we? It's not working. Okay, let's try this one. Right. Third time lucky.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, right. So yeah. While watching a stimulus with someone producing, in this case, an angry facial expression, you can see the movements in the corners of the eyes, the corners of the mouth, that mimic automatically the expression that they're watching. These micro movements aren't typically detectable unless you film them at very high speeds, and you can measure the same thing with muscle activity. I'll show this one again. So the corners of the mouth fold up a bit. It's a bit more obvious, that last person. Now we've looked at these kind of mechanisms with brain scans and other techniques, simultaneously measurements of the face. This shows an experiment where we got people to smile to frowning faces and frown to smiling faces while measuring the activity of these muscles. And all these graphs show is that it takes a longer time to smile to a frowning face and frown to a smiling face than it does to smile to a smiling face. And that kind of difficulty, cost to doing the opposite of someone else, is reflected in a change in the judgment of that face. If you're smiling to an angry face, you rate that anger as less intense than if you're frowning to an angry face. There's about 7% difference in how much you rate the face according to whether or not it's the same as your expression. And can show the brain areas that are responsible for mapping coherence across individuals. And these are the same brain areas that we typically see as being involved in generating your own emotional feelings. Just to round out, we did this experiment on students where we got students to rate different facial expressions. What they didn't know was we'd manipulated the pupil size of the faces. So, small pupils to large pupils. And no one picked this up during the experiment. We showed something very interesting, which is when you see small pupils on sad faces, you rate that face to be much more sad than if the face has a larger pupil. And that doesn't work for any other emotion, it's only in the context of sadness. And the people that are most sensitive to the pupil effects in sadness seem to show the most empathy on different scales of empathy. And when we scanned these people, we did that experiment in a brain imaging environment, scanning their brains, but we also measured their own pupil responses to these faces. And showed that when you see a small pupil on a sad face, your own pupil constricts that much more. And that kind of mirroring of pupil size does not occur for other emotions. So there seems to be something intrinsic about the pupil signal in sadness that doesn't apply to happiness, anger, neutral faces in this case. And there's a direct relationship with people's empathy. And we can show at the same time that this whole cycle of exchanged pupil information also controls brain regions that control your own pupil and so forth. So we can measure the brain correspondence to this contagion effect of pupils. And this is something that we hope to bring into the Chameleon Project as it matures. So to round up, emotional contagion is the reciprocation of emotions. It's linked to emotional feelings as are our own body states. So there's internal and external aspects to emotional contagion. It shapes our feelings and interactions with others related to empathy and can be explored powerfully with both science and art. Thank you.